Alrighty, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Christian Roderick. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for the Northeast Gas Association. I think many of you probably already receive emails from me, but if you don't know me, it's a pleasure to meet you or to be on this call with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon. I know you all have busy schedules. So we're excited to kick off this session as we introduce NGA's new partnership with HData, a leading provider of regulatory AI software. As you all know very well, navigating regulatory compliance and reporting is an essential but complicated and time-consuming part of our jobs. So NGA is always looking for ways to support you, our members. And one of the ways we are trying to do that is by setting up this partnership with HData. So today's webinar, Jason Stevenson here from HData will give you an overview of how the platform can streamline regulatory processes, improve your data analysis, and enhance your efficiencies. Jason is an executive at HData and a former rate analyst and auditor at the Wisconsin PSC. Before we dive in, please feel free to use the Q&A function here with questions as we go. I'll try and flag Jason down as questions come if he can't see it himself. But if you have more in-depth questions or you're interested in different functionalities, please reach out to me and we're happy to schedule one-on-one calls to highlight this. For those who wanted to be here or have staff or other team members that wanted to be here but couldn't be here, we will be doing these webinars once a week for the rest of February at the same time. So this is not your only chance. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason to get started. So Jason, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian. That's a really nice welcome. And as Christian mentioned, I did start as a staffer in the Wisconsin PSC. So I've sent my fair share of questions over to utility folks, so feel free to return the favor and post any in chat as we're going. We'd like to get more specific on anything that we're looking into. With that, I'm going to start by walking through just a few slides to kind of help orient really what HData does and how we're helping various utilities across the country. And then I'll jump right into the actual platform and really show you how exactly it works and the type of data that we're able to pull far more effectively. All right, so I am sharing my screen now. If you're not able to see it, please let me know.
We can see it, Jason.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. This is my all-time favorite slide that our marketing team sent me, and I always have to start with this. Just someday hoping someone disagrees with me, and I think we'll have about the most fascinating conversation I've had in regulatory. So if anyone doesn't agree with the statement, please let me know. We have to connect later and really talk through that. These are really the 6 key challenges that we found almost everyone we work with has. These are talking through various aspects, some on structured data, so like numbers that you can put in Excel, and some of this on what we call unstructured data, so like words you have to read to understand. And really a lot of this just comes down to data is hard to find, hard to analyze, incredibly time consuming to do so. And that also then implies that it's expensive to do so. People tend to either miss information because you don't have unlimited time to review every regulatory data source for every single document posted. And that's really what we're solving, is making this process easier, faster, and more effective. These are some of the things that we really see a lot of our customers using the platform for, gaining increased visibility into either their partner utilities in the same jurisdiction or what's going on certain topics across the country, getting insights faster by pulling out key topics I want to see anytime a competitive response rider pops up, and getting a quick summary of what's being proposed, what arguments are being made around it. Saving that time and cost of having a team of people or hiring external counsel to provide summaries of every single testimony document or full summarizations of full dockets and what was proposed, who argued for and against it, what was ordered, and keeping up on all that kinds of information. And lastly, trying to mitigate that risk of having missed information, making sure that your decisions include the entirety of the data available, and making sure that the staff that you have are fully up to speed and able to utilize all the information available, irrelevant of how long they've been with your organization. And then really lastly, before we jump into the platform, I wanted to just talk through some of the, a little bit more specific of some of the things that we see our customers using this for. Things like, how do I find the data documents I need? Instead, we have digitized and centralized data with consistent methods to search irrelevant of the state you're looking in, actual search capabilities that work much better than I've seen any state commission site. And again, with that consistency, you're not having to learn every single docket search system. They all work that same way. So pinpointing the most relevant information, again, having these advanced searches and alerts helping you find when new documents post that are matching what you're looking for, or finding historic ones to look for precedent, and then having that AI tool built for the regulatory environment to actually find that information within the documents that we're serving up for you. And then lastly, again, touching on the AI, actually understanding what's in the document. Finding documents that might be relevant in at most half the battle. What really becomes the problem is understanding what's contained within all of those. What are the action items that are arising from these? Do we need to respond to these or not? And again, it's really understanding how this might impact what our interactions with the regulatory bodies might be. Take a quick pause here and switch over to the platform. While I do that, I like to check in and see if anyone has any questions or comments before we pull into the platform. And again, just that quick reminder, we do have the QA in Teams that you're able to post any questions to that we'll be notified of.
Thanks, Jason. I don't see anything in the Q&A function just yet.
Thank you. All right, and I now have pulled up the HData platform. Christy asked if anyone's having trouble with the audio. Christian, are you able to hear me well?
I can hear you, Jason. I have not. Christy, you're the first I'm hearing. Sounds like, Jason, you're a little unclear, so maybe you can get a little closer to the speaker or something, but I can hear you.
Sorry, is this any better, Christy? Perfect. Thank you for letting me know. So from here, I thought I would start showing, one of the docket libraries and then getting right into the AI analysis and showing how we can have, documents selected, review them, the kinds of queries we can run against those documents. So I'll jump right into the Massachusetts DPU dockets catalog. For basic organization, each of these docket catalogs we have designed where you can look at each of these are being a docket, where, if we click into any of these, it'll show all the documents posted within them. We see, 11,000 dockets at Massachusetts, or we can also switch into a file-centric view, where now we're seeing just shy of 350,000, and it's every single document posted across the docket. Depending on the kind of analysis you want to do, you might want to switch into files to look for, all of the orders in a certain time period on a certain topic that you might want to analyze together. Or we might go into dockets to look for comparable dockets, or to select a single docket to do like a deeper dive into that one. I thought I would start by doing a filter. Since, of course, this is NGA, that we'd start immediately filtering just the gas dockets. And then looking for a long-range forecast. Let's see, a little bit of what do we see coming down the road. Here we see this pulled one docket that posted very recently. Here we have 3 matching that from 2024, and then some older ones. So I thought we would start with these from 2024. So what we can do is say we want to select documents for the AI. So we can select a docket, and it'll pull this window for us to select them. Here I thought we could go and pull up the oldest filings first. We can find like that initial plan, that initial filing, and go through and select that initial filing for each of these. So doing that same thing, filtering to the oldest docket, the oldest document for each of these, and selecting that initial filing document, that initial plan. And then we can create a session with the AI Pro. And I have one that I created with those already that I thought I would jump into so we can spend a little more time reviewing the types of questions and answers that we can run really more in depth. So basic function of how this AI system works is, as you see, it does save all of these sessions for you so you can go back and use it at any point in time. I find this really helpful if I'm switching between topics or I want to look into one docket and then maybe next year when the next one posts, I can go back and see what kind of analysis I did in the previous one to help guide what I want to ask or any topics that I might really want to dig into. I started with asking, provide an overview of each company's long-term forecast and plan, and then here I gave it a little bit of direction on how I wanted that answer to be put for me. So I provide a subheader for each company, and under each subheader include this information. So forecasts for both demand and energy, information on supply and price trends, impacts of energy efficiency and electrification, and plans for new pipeline development. So we can see here it took each of those three plans and it said here's Berkshire Gas Company, and provided that breakout of them. Demand and energy forecast, supply and price trends, impact and energy efficiency and electrification, plans for new pipeline, and it went through and it does this for each of these companies that we have selected. All right, I see a question there. Is there a limit on number of files selected for AI or size of files? Currently in the AI, we have a limit on selecting 50 files at any one time for any one session. And the size of the files, we don't currently have a limit on the size of the files that you can select from any public sources. So I see another one. What LLM models does HData use? We actually use the majority of the larger ones on the back end. So we're using Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Llama. And I can check with our product team to make sure I'm not missing any from that. But that is a really great question, and that kind of brings me into a short description of really how our AI system is working and what differentiates it from any more like off-the-shelf, like a ChatGPT or a Copilot that you might be more accustomed to. For starters, the ability to select this many documents and then limit it to only responding to those documents that you've selected. Kind of joke, having come from the commission, if something isn't on the record, it in reality doesn't exist for decision making. And we've really built this AI system to work with that in mind. So if you're selecting documents from a docket and you ask, what is the proposed ROE? You don't want an answer that someone said on Twitter or from a different docket or a different jurisdiction. It only really matters from that universe that you've selected of that docket. The other piece of how ours works is we're actually able to provide detailed citations showing where in each document these answers are coming from. So we can see the various documents that we have selected, the exact page number, and then a specific quote from that document showing exactly what was used in the creation of this full response. And then the even slightly more complex step that we're running, when we run these questions, our system is actually going through and taking that initial question and breaking it into a series of smaller subqueries that it runs against specific documents, such as what is the long-term demand and energy forecast for N-star, running it against just the N-star document. And so it's breaking this up. In this instance, it did 13 different questions, and it takes each of these questions, provides the answer just to that smaller question, including the citations to that response. And then it goes through and compiles each of these subquery responses into the final answer that it ends up displaying to you here. Next, I wanted to show, so with these AI queries, I kind of think of as two different aspects of how you can run these. The first half is really what information you want to know from the documents you've selected. And the second half can be the format in which you want the response. So in this first question, I said provide a subheader for each company, and under that provide bullet points. I could also say create a table with each utility along the top row, and then the following information. So it's looking for that same information, but in a tabular format instead of that more like bullet point format. And then I believe the last question that I have up here are what goals are listed for each company regarding energy efficiency plans. When possible, provide specific metrics that will be tracked and how they'll be measured and reported. And again, this is taking that same basic format of breaking it into each company, talking through the goals and focus areas, and providing that for each of these companies that we have selected here. And again, each of these provides that full citations, the full answer details of the specific questions it ran it against, and some suggested follow-up questions that we could also ask on these. This is always a chance I did a couple questions off the bat that we can have run, just to kind of walk through again some examples of writing these prompts. But I also really like to see if anyone in the audience has specific questions that you might like to see me run against these models and against these documents while we're discussing this.
Hey Jason, while we see if anybody asks any questions in the Q&A, could you show me what the recommended questions were again? You showed that pretty quickly.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So these recommended questions are, in this section, based on the response to that question that we have selected. So here it says, how do the energy goals of each company align with Massachusetts 2050 climate goals? What are the potential impacts of the Eastern Division moratorium on Berkshire Gas Company's long-term plans? And how does Boston Gas Company plan to address the supply-demand imbalances mentioned in their forecast? We could start with this first one of, how do the energy efficiency goals align with Massachusetts 2050 climate goals? So you can see
I think we actually got one in the chat. If a document is filed in the PSC docket, how long will it take to show up in the HData? Sorry, not exactly a question for the AI.
No, not a problem. So that depends on the specific state, but we're pulling them generally 3 to 4 times per day. So depending on the exact timing, generally at most a couple of hours. And we're pulling every publicly available document from those docket catalogs. No, it is automatic. So sorry, the question is it manually pulled or automatic? Those are automatically pulled. And then while this question is running, another piece that I wanted to show you is we do have this insights that are created as soon as we've gone through and selected the documents and created this AI session. So what the system here is doing before we ever ask a question is it actually goes through each document, provides a short summary of the document, but then also is going through and pulling out key topics, people mentioned, dates and events, and companies and entities. So I'll go into key topics so we can see here, it mentions customer segment forecast. If we select that, it will do that similar thing that we saw before and provide recommended questions based on that topic as well. So if you've selected documents or testimony that you haven't actually read yet, one of my favorite ways to start is just going into those key topics and doing a quick review of what did the system pull out as like the relevant key topics that I might want to begin looking into. Here I'll scroll so people can see like what some of the key topics are from these 3 plans. And here we see the response to that 4th question that we just ran, which was, how do energy efficiency goals of each company align with Massachusetts 2050 climate goals?
Jason, can you talk about the time the AI needs? Because that was pretty quick, but this is something that you've already had it looking at. Like, how long does it take for the AI to sort of generate responses?
So this question we didn't have ran prior, so that is about how long it generally takes. It's anywhere from a few seconds up to the most I've seen is a few minutes when I'm sending it like incredibly complex questions. And by, I guess, incredibly complex, I mean, I've done some tests where I had, like, say, 20 IRP documents selected all at the same time, and I asked it to provide a table of 10 to 15 different numbers from those IRPs across every single utility. And that took a few minutes.
Great, thank you. And I see a question from Caroline Hahn. Can we have a summary of the key common themes from discovery across the dockets? Not sure if we uploaded all the DRs.
So for discovery, I'm assuming you mean like the discovery requests, like the questions staff or interveners send to the utility. In that case, it partly depends on if those are publicly posted into the docket catalog, like the PSC website. It's like in Wisconsin, they are posted publicly. So in that case, HData would have all those directly in the platform by default. And you could go through and select those and then run queries like what you've asked. What are the key questions around this topic, or how are these types of questions generally responded to? And in states where those are not publicly posted, or if those are like confidential data requests that we wouldn't have access to, we also do have a private library where our customers can upload any documents that they want into that private library, and then have all that same searching and AI capabilities on those documents. Just because we discussed the private library, I always like to make it clear right away that that is an entirely secured section of the platform that is specific to each one of our customers individually. It's like myself and my colleagues have no access to any of our customers' private libraries. And of course, you'd only have access to your own. And on the discovery, that is something that I've worked with multiple of our customers on. So there's multiple methods of using AI to help with discovery. Some of them are looking for similar questions in either previous dockets or some of your other utilities dockets to see how they were asked and answered, or what questions you might be expecting that others had received, as well as taking the discoveries as they come in and querying it against the testimony that you've already uploaded, and using that to help get an initial draft response based on what you've already put into the record, or helping you point out what information isn't yet in the record to make sure that you are knowing to include that you can't just reference testimony if it hasn't been posted yet. And thank you for those questions. And last chance if anyone has any specific questions on these documents that we've selected, these three long-range energy forecasts, before I jump into a next section to kind of walk through other aspects of the platform as well. And if someone come up later, again, I can always come back into these as well. So if we come into this, regulatory AI, here you can see previous ones that I've run with some basic information, number of dockets, number of queries, etc., and where these were pulled from.
Jason, a couple more questions for you. Can it read Excel files?
It currently, I believe it can review Excel files, but only the data from them, or the value from them, not the underlying formulas. But I would have to double check with our product team to get that final answer on that.
And you mentioned there are multiple models under the hood. How are you selecting between them? How does that function?
So that I can speak to that briefly, but to get a more complex answer, I'd have to pull in someone on our product team. But we do run quite a bit of testing behind the scenes on all the different models, and as new versions of models come out, to ensure that they are up to our standard in terms of the accuracy, the complexity of the responses, and making sure that we're content with what they're providing for each of those.
And does the AI program link to the docket sites automatically, or does the user have to enter them manually?
No, it is automatically pulling from these docket sites. So I can actually show, I'm in Michigan right now, we could pick into a docket, and if I go to details, it will pull all this information in, and this is automatic in here. There's no requirement to enter in a specific docket website, as an example. And again, so that is, once we have that docket site pulled in, it is doing it generally 3 to 4 times per day, but that specific number is dependent on the exact state docket site. And then the other major aspect of the platform is not the AI side, but on the more structured data. So we're pulling in information from EIA and from various FERC forms and putting it into like pre-built charts and graphs that you're able to analyze some of this data from. Ones that I thought might be of particular interest to these groups are things like O&M gas and the gas index of customers, which this one is pulling in information from FERC forms 549B and D. So looking at pipeline contracts and pulling all of this into a single location. So you can view things like contracts that are set to expire within the next 90 days or have previously expired, as well as some more like detailed information on, say, like large pipelines, the 549B information. And any of these tables that we see here can, of course, be exported if you want to pull them into Excel. And all of this can also be filtered down to various time periods, the reporting and shipping company, whether it's transport or storage, and rate schedules, and information along those lines. We can modify any of these charts based on those. And then lastly, we also have the similar information, but in something we call Gateway, which is really a data extraction tool. This, we can say I want to pull data from a FERC form. We care about gas, so we'll look at, say, the FERC form 2. This will provide us a full list of all of these schedules. And this will allow us to say, I want gas plant in service. We could select that schedule and then go through and select which utilities we want to see this information for, which years, whether it's we want to pull quarterly or annual data, and then we'll provide an export of all of these fields in a usable format for us. All right, any additional questions on here? I don't see any currently, so I think I will go back into this AI session that we were looking into earlier and see if anyone has any last minute things they'd like to see, or Christian, if any of these, in your role, are there any of these key topics that you might want to look into to see like how this might impact, especially this being on the long range forecast, things that you might need to look into or provide some information on?
One new question, Jason. How far back historical data is pulled into the platform from the PSC website?
So again, that will depend on the exact state and how far back they have information available. We pull everything that is still available as of the date that we begin pulling it, and then maintain all of that on our own systems going forward. So if the states, I believe Pennsylvania goes back to like the early 1900s or late 1800s, so we've pulled all of that. Other states only maintain records going back the 30 or 40 years that they're like legally required to.
And we have a question about which states are in the platform. Maybe you can talk about what's already in there and what you guys are adding and plans to get included.
Yeah, so we have the majority of the population in the platform as of today, and we will have every state plus DC in 2025.
And that's great, Jason. Thank you. So let's say one of our members, knows that their state's going to be in by July, but they're not in there yet. But they have they've got they can upload the files into their personal library, and the AI still functions the same. Is that how that operates if they've got the data?
That is absolutely correct. And thank you. And I can show that briefly with this private documents catalog. So what I'm showing you here is the HData instance of the private library, which we, of course, don't put in confidential documents that we can't show anyone. But here, uploading is as simple as you can select upload and drag them, or select files from here. It pulls them into the platform. We have all of the same advanced searching capabilities. So if we wanted to look for Stevenson, we could filter to that and see like just documents posted that contain the phrase Stevenson within here. All right, and then I see another question, Christian, pricing. For that, if we can reach out to Christian and or Alana, and we can have like a more detailed discussion around what the pricing model looks like and how we can get you all access to the platform directly. And again, so that was everything that I had planned to present to everyone. Again, I'm happy to always do additional questions, or if you want to see various queries that we can run, I'm always happy to run more of those against these documents or others. But the one thing I did want to make sure that I did discuss, and this, really thank you again for that question, ties into that. If any of you want to see this, more directly applicable to the work you'd be doing, please reach out to Christian, Alana, and myself, and we can help arrange time for us all to meet and walk through more specific examples. We can select, if you let us know exactly how you'd want to use it, whether it's looking into a specific docket or looking into a specific topic across states, we'd be happy to work with you to show how that would work in the platform and loop in additional members of your team to really walk through that in detail together.